welcome to the show where we share the stories of the many who intersect with our healthcare system but are rarely heard from. My name is Kevin Poe, founder and editor of Kevin MD. Today in the show, we have Eunice Stallman. She is a psychiatry resident and she wrote the Kevin MD article, So, are you committed to medicine or your baby? Eunice, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
We'll get into your article in a little bit, but first off, can you share your story and journey to where you are today?
Definitely. So I'm a psychiatry resident. I'm in my fourth year. I'm graduating off cycle because I'm making up a few maternity leaves, which we'll talk about later. But I graduate in about 3 months. I'm here in Boise, Idaho. My journey to medicine, I was entertaining a few different things, but ultimately decided that I wanted to do psychiatry as a doctor. I'm the first in our family. I went to med school in Ohio State University. That was my first time being in the Midwest. It was awesome. It was cold. Then we moved back to be closer to family. And so I write about my experience having children in training. I had my first in third year of med school, and then my second in intern year, and then my third in third year of residency.
So let's get right into that and talk about your Kevin MD article. And I'm certainly interested in hearing more about your story as well as the challenges and how you overcame those challenges having a family during residency. That article is titled, So, are you committed to medicine or your baby? Now, for those who didn't get a chance to read that article, can you just walk my audience through it and share the story of why you decided to write it?
This article, in some ways, has been years in the making. I mean, I remember starting medical school and wanting to have children. I didn't want to, I know it's such a personal decision for everyone, and there's so many factors in place, but I did not want to wait until after training. There were a lot of things that I encountered throughout, a lot of people who said, no, this is crazy. No one does that. And I decided to go for it. And so there were a lot of obstacles, I will say. And throughout my training, I kept this little notebook with me through med school, in the wards, all throughout training, and kind of wrote down little notes that helped me just to get it off my chest. And I wrote down, the hardships. I wrote down what my emotions are like. I wrote down about wanting to quit medicine. And I didn't really all pull it together until fourth year. I think it took a long time to process, and only in the position of being on the other side and having had a few years to look back on the past 8 years, was I able to pull it together. And so I think that what I realized is that I'm not the only one, even though going through it, I felt like I was the only one. And so I hope to kind of get this message out that for other women who are considering having kids in training, this is what I've gone through. This is what you may go through and experience, and you'll come out of it from the other end. And you will have an opportunity to shape what it's like for future generations of doctors. So, but ultimately to show that you're not the only one.
Now, you said at the beginning, there were a lot of factors, of course, that went into that decision. What were some of those factors?
Some of those factors for me was just, I had always wanted to have a large family, and for women waiting to finish training, sometimes that's 10 years out, 10, 15 years out from starting med school. And so just, I think that's a factor that sometimes women, I think a lot of times women think about way more than men going into this career. I think also part of me wanted to prove that I could do it. Part of me wanted to, say to my future daughter, like, this is what I did. This is what you can do. I think growing up, I had a wonderful mom she was a stay-at-home mom. And that's kind of how I always thought that women were to be. That's what you do when you have kids. And I didn't want that, even though I look up to her and I love her dearly and all of that. So those are some of the factors. We had gotten married. We felt ready. So.
All right. And you said that there were a variety of people who said it wasn't a good idea. Who were some of these people who discouraged you from doing so?
There were, I think, a lot from all camps of people. Some of my co-medical students, some of the residents that I was working under as a med student, some of my attendings. I think as a young woman going into medicine and you're thinking about this, you're talking to other women who they have kids or they don't have kids, and you kind of ask them what factors played into your decision if you have a close relationship with them. And in those discussions, people said, like, I waited until after a few years after training, and that was the only time that I could have seen myself doing it.
Hmm.
There were residents with or without kids saying, like, it's really hard, I would never do it, or I did it and I don't spend very much time with my kids. And then there's people, my peers, who said, like, how are you supposed to learn medicine if you're also thinking about having kids, or if you're also pregnant or taking care of children? So in all levels of training, the people that I had talked to, the vast majority, I would say, kind of expressed shock and disbelief. And there were a few who stood out to me and said, you do what, there's never a good time, and do what you want to do. And I think I've carried their voices and their support with me throughout training, knowing that there were people there.
So if you had the vast majority discouraging you from having a family during training, what was going through your mind through then? And tell me what you were thinking as these people were advising you in terms of your family and career path.
One thing that went through my mind was for people who didn't have kids during training and advising me, it was like, well, I'm sure it's easy to say that on the other side, but these people, they haven't gone through it. So I'm taking their advice with a grain of salt,
Hmm.
knowing that, yes, they have gone through training and know how difficult and strenuous it is, but they haven't gone through this specific thing in training, that is having children and all that. And then I think there's just a part of me that was like, this is not how medicine should be. For so many years, it's been a male dominated field. And then there are other factors where, for the majority of the past years too, where, men might have wives or partners who stay at home with the kids, or who work part-time or have flexible jobs. And this is just not how current society is. And as we see, over 50% of med schools be med students now are female, and a lot of the previously male dominated specialties there are more and more women, and it's time to change that. It's unrealistic to expect women to wait, I think.
So I think that journey, having a family, of course, is, I'm sure, very challenging. But before I get into that, but tell me how rewarding it was. Tell me why you made the right decision of having a family during your medical training.
It's so rewarding. I mean, I acknowledge that it was really hard. I acknowledge that there were parts that it was heartbreaking, going through intern year, going through the 80-hour work weeks without seeing your kids during the majority. Um, but it was so rewarding to have something that is so important to draw you home, I think, to have this other aspect of your life that is equally, if not more important than medicine. And I think for me, it helped put everything that I went through in training under perspective, in perspective, that, okay, this is, medicine is awesome and it's important, and I'm doing a great service, and I love it. And it's not the only thing that defines me, which I think sometimes we might get in the trap of falling into. I just remember, coming back from a 28-hour shift and seeing my son and just all the death and suffering that I saw
Mhm.
earlier in the day was just, okay, put that aside. Now I have this joyous bundle of life in front of me. So I think it was just so rewarding. And looking back, and now my kids are 1.5 and 3.5 and 5.5, that I couldn't imagine going through training without them.
Now, tell me, who did you lean on for support, guidance, and mentorship during this journey?
Yes, that is huge. I think my husband he has taken on throughout the vast majority of training such a huge part of the burden. The burden of childcare, the burden of taking sick days when the kids are sick, the burden of housework. We moved closer to family for residency, especially intern year. And so our family is in Seattle, Washington. And during the 2 years that we were in Seattle, we had grandparents help take care of my first two, and they alternated. So my mom took care of them when Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then my in-laws took care of them Monday and Friday. And that was how we did it. When we were still in Columbus for med school, we had the grandmas alternate taking turns flying and staying with us in this tiny apartment watching the baby. I mean, I feel like if we did not have the support that we did in terms of family and in terms of our friends and who chipped in when grandparents couldn't help, I think that was the only way that we did it. So our support system was huge.
So, the title of your article was, "So, are you committed to medicine or your baby?"
Mhm.
Did people actually question your commitment to medicine as you were having a family through a training?
Yes, definitely. People did. I think there were people who thought that, you're less committed or you're less than, or you won't be as good of a doctor because you're distracted or you're thinking about your home life. And I've had, my peers ask me that. I've had attendings, I've had residents. There was one attending who pulled me aside, and I think I was pregnant with my second, and I was taking step 2 and just really stressed out. And I was on inpatient psych. I was doing my job, I was doing it well and getting good feedback. And he pulled me aside and said, I wonder if part of you is distracted, and you're getting everything done, you're doing a fantastic job, but I just wonder if you're distracted or if you're committed to this. And he asked me, have you ever thought about leaving medicine to stay at home? And I thought, whoa,
Mm.
this is a man who has a stay-at-home partner, watching his kids, and he's pulling me aside asking if I'm committed or not. And I don't think that he would do that to a guy who is expecting a baby. And so I think that was really hard. And those words, those literal words, "Are you committed to medicine or your baby?" were ones that I had heard from not just him, but a few other people.
And what are some of the things that you did to address that criticism or try to resolve that within yourself?
I think it's hard when you're a trainee. You are under this hierarchy, is, you take your attending or your superior's word. And I think part of me said, yeah, I mean, if this attending is doubting me, maybe I am not cut for this. Maybe I am not meant to be, having trying to go through training and still taking care of my kids. The guilt is real, the mom guilt, saying, well, I am I not doing well in training, and am I not doing well at being a mom? And so how can I cut my losses, of, maybe I should just be at home. And so I think there's this part of it. And then this other part of really digging deep and saying, I know what I'm capable of, and I know that I'm strong, and I have all these people behind me saying, we're going to help you. You can do this. And kind of really keeping those voices and that encouragement near and dear. I think I've also had fantastic female mentors who did have children in training, kind of that I reached out to in those moments, and helping and speaking with them was really helpful, and kind of reaffirming like, okay, you can do this. This is not forever, and it'll be worth it at the end. And I think kind of pulling yourself out from that moment of despair or questioning yourself, that was necessary. So this is, I hope to be one of those mentors or be one of those attendings for the next generation of med students and residents.
We're talking to Eunice Stallman. She is a psychiatry resident, and she wrote the Kevin MD article. So, are you committed to medicine or your baby? Eunice, if you were to do this journey all over again, is there anything that you would do differently?
I don't think so. I think the timing that I had my kids was, people have told me that's the worst time that you could possibly have kids. I mean, third year during wards, first year during intern year. I agree that it was really, really hard, and I would not have changed it. I think it helped me get through those hard years. There was a point where I took some time, a leave of absence, when I was rethinking about my decision to go into medicine. I was home with my two older kids for about 4 months, and during that time, I was thinking about other jobs that I could do with an intern year under my belt. And ultimately, I came back, and I've thought to myself, like, do I regret that time? And I don't regret it. I think it was important for my growth. It was important for me to think about and really recommit to this decision that I was going to go finish training. And then now, and on the other side of things, I'm making up, 4 months of residency, and that was a worry of mine. And I was worried about jobs. I was worried about graduating off cycle, and if people would question, why are you graduating late? And it doesn't matter. There was no difficulty finding a job. There was, I had those 4 months with the babies at the time that was much more important to me than this arbitrary goal of graduating in July. And so I don't regret that either. No one cared that I'm graduating in November. And I think it defined a lot of this journey to, define who I am and how I work with patients and what I'm committed to, which is both.
And my final questions, do you have any advice to other prospective parents who are also going through medical training? And perhaps you can end off with a take-home message to the Kevin MD audience.
Yes, my take-home message is that you are not alone, and that you belong in medicine, whether or not you have kids. You've worked hard to be there. The fact that you're going through that journey shows that you're committed to medicine. And so whether or not you choose to have kids, that is your choice. And if you do choose to have kids, then you are not alone, despite maybe at times feeling like you are. So, and I've had, after this article came out, I've had quite a few people reach out to me through Doximity, through social media, saying, I also had kids in training, and your article was something I could have written, like those things I experienced exactly. And so I think that was really validating for me. And so my message too is for people who haven't read this article or haven't met any other people who have gone through training having kids, and they're hearing all these people tell them that they don't belong or that they're not committed, that that's not true. You're not alone.
Eunice, thank you so much for sharing your story, time, and insight. And thanks again for being on the show.
Thank you, Kevin.